parliamentary systems, and I think you need to stay. When you finish with your PhD, you want to make sure it's either in the field of public management or political science. You don't want both. Remember, you are going to be the expert in a field with the PhD. You can't straddle political science and public management. So you have to make up your mind early o'clock now what you want to do.
Developing countries, but when I was looking at the definition for developing countries, I had difficulty because WTO doesn't, WTO says you could say, oh, your country, your country developed, or nothing. But they say Trinidad is developed, not the WTO. Some says after that, but that is for in terms of funding and trading and all that. So they can't get really developed, they can't get some support.
But why you look at two countries in the Anglophone Caribbean?
So just say that.
Or you could look to ex-colonial Caribbean countries.
So I can say development as ex-colonial rather than Westminster. But really I wanted to go with that, but at the same time.
You tweak. Let me tell you, the title not important now as much as you tweaking your proposal.
I have a thought on that, and I have a thought on the leadership part. I have to deal with that same question of the comparator. And I recognize, I haven't chosen a comparator. My gut tells me Jamaica at this point in time, but there's something that informs that. But there's something that will better inform it. And that was, I'm going to look at literature and see what are the bases for selecting a comparator. So when you said Barbados, I have Jamaica in mind, and I'm thinking we have there are a number of factors we have in common. The one difference between Jamaica and Barbados and us is that they became independent, but they didn't become a republic. Jamaica and Trinidad both became independent and became a republic. So
Jamaica is not a republic.
It's a government. Barbados is on its way to becoming a republic.
Oh, okay. So that's something I need to consider.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't change my primary point. My primary point is that we both have to identify criteria for selecting a comparator.
Yeah.
So there's a historical similarity. There are items of similarity. History, ex-colonial, being Caribbean.
She could look at size. Size will make sense for her because she could look at two small countries, Barbados and Trinidad. Jamaica is much larger. In terms of she could look at size, she could look at population size, she could look at ministry, she could look at economy and say, she could try to make a fix there. Barbados may be her better fit. Jamaica will be your fit because in terms of implementation of that ICT, Jamaica will be the front runner. So you have to develop your criteria. She will develop her criteria. But you see, another thing, I'll tell you something. In Jamaica, you might have gotten a little more confusing data for you. Barbados is more clean cut. From my experience outside, Barbados will lag behind. It will lag behind in terms of they had not, when I went across in Barbados about 2 or 3 years ago, implemented new public management reforms. So I don't know how much they have done it now.
No, but for a small country, they've done well with the resources that they have.
Excellent.
They have first world, I mean, what do they have? Some states in terms of are they ranked higher?
No. Barbados, I don't know whether it is because they're Little England, their people are entirely different from our
culture again.
Culture is an important thing, and that's why I say one of the things will come out is culture. It will come out, but the only time you know it will come out is when you get raw data and start analyzing the data. Yes, you can do it, yes.
And I knew some, I had some liquid PSS.
Wayne Soberall is there again. You don't know Wayne?
But not within recent time, but a few years ago I had some.
Wayne is a good man to touch base with. Ask Bishop for Wayne's email. Wayne is now a newbie, but Wayne was there for the reform when I went across.
Who was a PS?
He was one of the change agents.
You know what about Timbersport? In public admin, we have change.
Change agent.
And we have change agents as well. Change management.
Yeah, no, you have people who just in each ministry.
Machinery.
Yeah.
They became non-effective. They started becoming people that delegate various things to, but nothing core and nothing earth-shattering. They didn't seem to make a fundamental difference.
So bad. They run the interviews, young people with degrees who didn't understand the problem. Everything was off for that.
So Wendy, are you alright now?
Yeah, I'm good as I read. That's what I was reading course.
You have to do directed. You have to do your directed readings too. You finished directed readings already?
That first part unfinished. If I didn't do directed reading before and then I stopped that, I finished that.
Okay, so but you got it. All right. So you need to get yours.
Yeah, I'm just.
What format you use?
No, I use just like what we described it, but the only thing I use more. I didn't want a second page on each. Just one page.
That's what I'm telling you. Just let's get that process done.
There was one thought in the discussion earlier on. We were talking about leadership, and it occurred to me that leadership, good leadership. What phrase? What type of leadership?
Effective leadership.
That's sound governance.
Now, you reminded me of a conversation I had with a former PS. Well, and then she was a PS, talking about the previous PS, and she described this one as a dinosaur. So in 1990 something, she being a PS assessed a former PS who was a giant to have been a dinosaur. So her concept of leadership or stewardship or whatever you want to call it would have differed over time in Trinidad. Similarly, the definition of good leadership in Trinidad would probably be different to in Singapore. So you might have to consider what's good leadership in Trinidad during a particular period, maybe different to what's good leadership in Barbados or your comparative country, whatever time it is.
How do you determine that? Is there literature to support that in terms of rewriting and the fact that people don't really write?
No. I'll tell you something. Your material is still leadership, right?
Yeah.
The theory of leadership. Effective leadership is when she starts looking at the report
That will come in
and starts looking at joint committee and saying
time was effective.
Yeah.
So when you get that literature in your analysis, I could see you now determining whether or not in Trinidad or Barbados.
You know when you read further along, both of you discuss this whole thing about measurement with either Benny Berkeley, Kevin Taylor, Ronald Marshall, or even Godfrey St. Bernard. These are our statisticians, and you have to rely on those people really, really very much. Marshall was very good for me. Marshall could prioritize, could tell you how to prioritize. Marshall was, to me, my bedrock in where she actually told me what kind of methodology questions would come for the defense. And he coached me, and I went in there, and the questions came. Those are the people, at a certain point, you have to make sure that what you're doing is correct. All the measurements, I go to a statistician. I was assigned, remember, Earl Marshall before, and he died, and then I went to Ronald Marshall. Your statistician is your key person to measure. So you have to fix yourself to a statistician and bounce the ideas of measurement, evaluation off them. Because Marshall also worked with Kenyon. Kenyon is good too, as a statistician, he's very good. So, but Marshall to me was my key. Benny is very good, Benny Berkeley, very good. Godfrey St. Bernard, the only thing with Godfrey, a little more complex that sometimes I can't understand. He loses me.
Well, if he loses you, who is a professor, imagine me having
So he loses me sometimes, gets tied up, goes into the really difficult things. Marshall is very clear, was very clear with me.
Marshall's no longer here.
Yeah. No, Marshall's still here. But Benny is young and Benny has a lot of experience in this.
And he's writing what?
Yeah.
107?
Yeah.
107 downstairs there, right?
But they are approachable people.
I interviewed him and he was in that building off campus.
No, he's no longer there. He's right across from 107 now.
Oh, where this fellow who comes to these sessions, teaches, he's a lecturer.
Josh.
Same area.
Yeah, same area.
Okay.
So those are the people you need to make an acquaintance with, and you need to double check your methodology with them.
I spoke to Dr. Taylor at some point in
Yeah.
the day. I haven't spoken to him recently.
Yeah, but you depend on them too. You have them as part. Everybody's advisory I usually put on a statistician. So they'll discuss that with the advisory people.
He's given a lecture series to the Sociological Society right now on Thursdays from 1:30 to 2:30.
Who is that, Dr.
He's in room 101, yeah. I think I
But you see what he's doing with that? He will be doing the hardcore method. You need not hardcore now because you would have done that course.
Yeah.
What you need is to double check well what my measurement are doing it correctly, are prioritizing correctly, how I evaluating is it correct. Rather than going to a course you would have done in the master's level, you would have done a methodology course, a research method course. So don't recreate the wheel again.
But I went to his lecture last week and it sounded a bit more applied than I went to the Solis's course in statistics and it was very
not very
theoretical.
difficult.
It was very, and it was very theoretical.
Yeah.
But he in his lecture last week, although it's a bit more superficial because he's speaking to a wider audience, he brought it closer to reality.
Okay, but you could go and make their acquaintance and say, well, I do so and so, and could I just use you now and again, and they'll say, use them. So when do you are? Good. Marlene, you want to go?
Okay, this is where I'm at right now. I have nothing with me for the boxes.
Yeah, but you were talking about.
Understand? Yes.
She has been talking to me all the time.
Yeah, and I've been talking to Dr. Berkeley, Dr. Taylor all the time too. But my thesis is basically on voter behavior and political marketing. So the focus right now, where I'm at right now, really and truly, like Wendy, I'm not really seeing a big challenge right now.
I think your aha moment was the whole thing about marginal.
Right, and to some extent, I still have a little I really have. You understand? The point is, right now, I'm going through all the electoral reports. I just have 2007 and 2010 to complete where I'm doing the trend analysis. So I'm going good with that. What struck me with that though, and this is where to me a little exciting, there's a big percentage of people that don't vote.
The non-voters.
The non-voters. Apart from the political marketing, why do people vote where they vote? Which is the real focus of the thesis. That group of people we need to capture. I'm working on the percentages, and different people have different perspectives. What exactly is a marginal constituency? And that
but you're going into that discussion.
No, what I will do after I've completed, and by weekend I'll complete the whole trend analysis, is now I now come to you. How do we choose the sample size?
No, well, you will have arrived at over time you're getting marginal constituencies.
Yeah, I'm marking that out too.
And you're not focusing, you're saying you're looking at the marginal voter.
Right.
Which brings you away because my concept of marginal constituency differs from other people's
Exactly.
concept. So we don't want to get into that discussion because that will bog your thesis down. And you'll have too many people raising too much issues. You're looking at the marginal voters. So we're saying in these constituencies, you have the largest number of people who could swing. Right. That's what you say.
Yes.
But to come back now, you're going to ask, one of the things you're going to bring up is the non-voter.
Yes.
And the non-voter is where you'll now put in one or two questions that actually target those non-voters.
Yes.
Did you vote in the election so and so?
Yeah.
And you'll come back with a different question. And what I will say is when you see these people, when you're analyzing, these people didn't vote. Why? And that is where you're testing your political marketing on these non-voters.
So I have the questions already, I just have to put them in the Likert format. So I have that already, so I'm moving with that.
But you also doing a content analysis, and Derek Chady, from his inaugural lecture, we recognize that Derek Chady is doing content analysis in psychology lab.
Okay.
He has done content analysis in terms of citizen security, where they're using the newspaper to look at the content analysis. And you probably could look at the format they use.
Yeah, because I saw something in this weekend's newspaper too, where they have again with elections, and something I downloaded in the Express previously on
there's an advertisement coming out on TV all the time, Voices.
Yes.
And that to me is interesting because now one of the questions that will be asked is, when does the government advertising become political marketing, which is what you raised in class. How are you going to distinguish that? Is it that the incumbent government uses government marketing as political marketing?
Political agenda.
Yeah. And to me, that is a discussion that will come out and which will come in your defense and people ask you that.
So for that, I have to be clean with that part.
You have to be clean. That is a question. That's one of your main questions coming in that defense.
And what struck me too, ever since I signed up and we got approved for the MPhil, I've never seen mentally, Prof, I've never seen myself doing an MPhil. So my biggest question that may very well come up, why the upgrade? What warrants that? That's not an issue?
No, usually that happened with Geneva. And what I said to them is whenever a student starts, you could decide whether it's at the stage of our PhD. We went straight into the PhD stage rather than the MPhil stage. And in terms of the element, in terms of the sophistication of it, this is, you're breaking new ground. And to me that is critical.
So that should cover that whole side.
So I will answer that for your upgrade committee.
So that will come.
That will be a major issue.
So basically, I'm not looking at the whole methodological language and everything. I am just trying now to get my own sense of methodology, So I'm doing the trend analysis. From that will come out the sample size. I've already done the questions for which I will just need to approve it.
I think what you need to do is talk to Marshall in terms of once you get your marginal constituency.
Yes.
And you get your marginal polling station. Say this is the marginal voter. This was a shift. This is the trend you saw.
Right,
and therefore, how much of these people should we sample?
How much should we sample?
And let Marshall usually writes a paragraph for you. He did that for me. I did it for you. He actually wrote the paragraph, which I looked at. No, I don't mean for the exam. I don't mean for the thesis. But he wrote down the language. He wrote the language.
The language, and you follow along.
And I follow that line.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is good.
Because there is a language in terms of the method.
And I think that's the biggest part of it, Prof, the methodology. Doing that trend to see where the large bulk of undecided or the non-voters reside. And then for him to determine now the sample size.
My sample size.
And then I'm saying by September I see upgrade. So by July or the end of June, I should be talking the language, the method language.
Yeah.
So for now, I'm not talking the language.
So what you should have done, you need to tweak your introduction,
and
your literature review, your reading, and all you have to do is now pull that together. And then the third thing you have to do is that method.
Yeah, and that's the main focus of it there. But I think once we
you have your methodology. Or if you just find your sample size, and that's it.
And because the diagram in terms of the chart will suffice and has everything on it. I've looked at the one thing, would it make a big difference if I use the electoral list, the registered voter, or do I need to use the supplemental list? The revised list, sorry.
You could, for purposes of consistency, I would use the revised list.
Use the revised list rather than the list of registered voters.
Keep a constant. If you're using one list, use one list.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I've used the list in terms of creating the columns.
Nobody going to double check that.
No, but I'm consistent.
But be consistent.
So I am measuring that against those, the amount of people voted. And that is where I saw that
people will say,
people
will say the revised list is the correct list.
Yes.
And I would
say, it's not a big thing to change.
Even if you use the other list, you say you use the revised list.
No, but it's not a big thing to change. In case they want to speak in public, like they say, use the revised list. So it's easy for to change because just one column, and then whenever you already assisted,
they say you're using revised list and college.
So I'm doing that as one column. I'm looking at that against how many people actually voted, and that gives me my difference, non-voters. Then I'm looking at another thing in terms of constituency. The highest thing, the person who won the constituency, the number of seats. By how, and the second highest, and that gives you your margin. You understand? And then how many people won whatever you're looking at.
And say what people said about margin.
What they said about margin difference.
I would say this, the marginal constituency was not my concern. My concern was to look at the marginal voter. So I used it from these constituency because they said this.
And that is the
make sure somebody will want to confuse you with margin.
No, I'm very clear with that.
Said this is what I did.
Yes.
I am not here to debate what is marginal and what is not marginal because that's very
So what could also be a good
And
way
that's
to
suppose
choose?
when you go into your defense too, remember when they're asking you people things, say this is what I intended to do. I didn't intend to do Theodore this one, that. This is what I intended to do and this is what I did.
Yeah, because somebody was asking me another this question. So what about the finance? I said my focus is not finance. I have nothing to do with finance. My thesis does not focus on finance.
So that is for another person.
Yeah, that's for somebody else who's doing campaign finance and whatever. But I'm not doing nothing with finance. So I basically, this is where I am now.
So you're right, and you just have to.
I'm all right.
You just have to write up.
I have to write up and stuff. So once I complete that, the questions I've already taken out, I would put it in the format.
Okay.
And then you see what we could keep, what we will
Speak to Dr. Raghunath, so you could go with Luanda for the upgrade. You may, Dr. Theodore may not be able to look at voting behavior, would you?
To look for sources, maybe.
No. I mean to sit on their upgrade, because that's not your area. So we probably could look. We could look at somebody else. We could look at Kevin Taylor. So you need to throw out some names.
Only for Dr. Raghunath?
Yeah.
Okay. And I also did the letter to ask that Dr. Roach be replaced on the committee for Dr. Berkeley because he's more method. Dr. Roach was good when I was looking at leadership. But in terms of
so you've got a response on that.
I've gotten a response on that.
Okay, follow up on that.
I'll follow up on that.
Because you need a statistician to sit there.
Yeah. So
that will be useful for you too.
Yeah, so I did that already too, so I'll follow up on that.
So you upgrade, just have a discussion with Dr. Raghunath and say you would like to go in together with one. You don't mind the chair, okay, because I will kill you.
No, I don't bother with that.
And there's one other person we need, probably Kevin Taylor.
Well, you said him already, so with him and Lokesh.
And me, I will be the supervisor. And we'll call that.
And then he will decide on the next step.
Okay. So we all good.
Thank you. As you mentioned committees, I have my committee is only